So I have been on the carnivore way of life for about 3.5 years. It's crazy that it's been that long. But if I were to tell you that I was strict carnivore the entire time, that would be a very big lie. Most people who have discovered the low carb, ancestral eating, animal-based way of life has trial and errored it and have done many different variations. I find that I do my best on strict carnivore, and I exist in that space 99% of the time. The other 1%, I am integrating things in that are a little bit less strict carnivore, like pickles, or I'll have a couple jalapenos here or there. I'll try things here and there, but I'll also wait to see how my body reacts. And actually, I had some onions and they did not agree with me. I actually had like a pretty big histamine reaction to them, which I would have never noticed before starting carnivore. I do notice that I'm more sensitive to certain foods, but I also kind of feel like you get used to feeling like shit when you're eating the standard diet, and so it's really hard to know when things really do affect you, because going from feeling amazing to feeling not so great is a big shift, whereas most people feel like shit all the time. So this person asked in particular, do I do anything that is like a sweet kind of treat? So every once in a while, if I feel like I am able to handle it, because I am a food addict and I am food sober on many foods like chips and crackers and the things that I would typically compulsively eat and binge. So I do not play around with that sort of stuff. But every once in a while, a little sweet treat does just fine for me. And so I will take a Element chocolate salt packet, and I will put a little bit of that in a coffee or hot water, and I'll put a little bit of that chocolate mint in. So every once in a while I'll do something like that. I do also drink alcohol, so that will be a little bit of a treat for me. I'll do something like I'll use seasoning with citric acid, or I have like a sour salt with citric acid, and that's a way that I get something kind of fresh and new into my diet that just tastes a little bit different and breaks up the monotony of eating just meats and eggs. And then, champagne, when I drink dry champagne or Prosecco or even Sauvignon Blanc, that's very sweet. So that will like kind of satisfy a desire to have like some sort of different flavor profile. But again, I try not to have a lot of sweet because I am food sober, in the sense that I do not like to have the hyper palatable foods because they make me just want more. And that's why I don't really play around with cheeses too much. At some point in my carnivore journey, I decided that I was going to do like cream cheese and cottage cheese. In fact, one of my first viral videos on TikTok was my cottage cheese chip recipe, and I do not make that anymore. Those were staples. I would have yogurt every day, cottage cheese every day, cream cheese. I would make my own from whole milk, and I just don't do any of that anymore. When I do have cheese, it's like raw cheddar, or it's Parmesan. It's something that's like a hard aged cheese. So those are some ways that I make carnivore a little bit more interesting. One of my cheats that I had recently was a couple slices of American cheese, and that is processed like crazy. So every once in a while I do things that are not strict carnivore or even considered whole foods. And I want to be honest about that, because I think that's really important, that from a 3.5-year carnivore and a carnivore coach, that I don't expect myself to be perfect, and I play around with things and then I figure out my limits. So I figured out if something is like a buffer food that is like a non-strict carnivore food that I can have in a small amount that makes me feel like it takes the edge off of any restricted feelings that I have. I don't feel that way though on carnivore. I really don't feel restricted. How can you feel restricted having a ribeye? But I think about, is something a buffer food or is it a trigger food? And I'll know pretty quickly if I introduce it in that it's a trigger. Like, one thing that I've had in the past during my carnivore adventure is cucumbers and cream cheese. Pretty basic, pretty mild, but even that sort of thing will wake up my cravings again. And I tend to go back to strict carnivore and say, okay, meat, salt, water, let me get those carbs out of my diet. So I hope that's helpful, just to see that it doesn't need to be perfect. The journey can be like this up and down, as long as you are learning how to listen to yourself and you're learning to really allow yourself to be strict for a while and go through that restriction, and allow yourself to say no to yourself for a little bit, and then slowly introduce things back in, and then pay attention to how you feel. And if you're not feeling great, you go back to where you were. I hope that helps.